Okay, I call this regular council meeting to order for June 24th. Mr. Arnold, would you lead us in the pledge of allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Last one with a roll call, please.
Mr. Arnold.
Here.
Mrs. Fenderbosh.
Here.
Ms. Gentry. Mr. Koss.
Here.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Here.
Mr. Shamir.
Here.
Mr. Zuber.
Here.
Mayor Spetzel.
Here.
Law Director Evert.
Here.
Finance Director Widman.
Here.
Public Works Director Litzkovitz.
Here.
The first item we have this evening is a resolution, 2491, and if the clerk will read this in its entirety.
Yes. A resolution of gratitude and appreciation to the Avon Lake Library and its staff members, Jerry Vogel and Laura Plensky. Whereas this council wishes to pause and express its gratitude to the Avon Lake Public Library and its staff members, Jerry Vogel and Laura Plensky. And whereas the city's records retention schedule identifies the historic legislative documents and meeting minutes of council as permanent records, and the clerk of council is the custodian of these records. And whereas it is the duty of the clerk of council to store these permanent records in a secure location and to utilize the most practical preservation practices that are determined by the city's finances and based on the recommendations of the Ohio History Connection of Columbus, Ohio. And whereas legislative records from May of 1949 to the present date and meeting minutes from 1972 to the present date have been scanned and digitized and are stored electronically within the city's document management system. But legislation from 1918 to April 1949 and minutes from 1918 to 1972 have not been digitized because they were bound into 26 books. And whereas duplicated council's permanent records serves as a backup in the event the permanent records are damaged or destroyed, and provides legal or genealogy research. And whereas the clerk of council researched methods to digitize the 26 books and consulted Jerry Vogel, the Avon Lake Public Library Assistant Director, who recommended the city and the library apply for a Library Services and Technology Act grant to fund an acquisition of a high-resolution book scanner. And whereas the grant application was denied, but the Avon Lake Public Library Board of Trustees agreed to fund the purchase of a high-resolution Zoysia book scanner that was then received in 2021. And whereas the clerk of council and the assistant clerk of council were trained on utilizing the Zoysia book scanner and started the preservation project during council recess in 2021. And whereas the project was suspended after council recess concluded because of the clerk's time-consuming duties and responsibilities to council, and whereas Mr. Vogel knew the project was suspended, contacted the clerk of council in February of 2023 and offered the assistant of the Avon Lake Public Library staff and other qualified volunteers to resume and finalize this project. And whereas beginning in June of 2023 and ending in April of 2024, librarian Laura Plesensky took the lead on this project, and she and other volunteers meticulously and patiently scanned and digitized 26 books. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Council of the City of Avon Lake, State of Ohio, this council does, for and on behalf of the City of Avon Lake, extend its gratitude and appreciation to the Avon Lake Public Library, Assistant Director Jerry Vogel, Librarian Laura Plonsky, and other volunteers who participated in this preservation of the permanent legislative records and minutes of council. That the council directs the clerk of council to include this resolution in the minutes of this meeting, and she is hereby requested to transmit a certified copy of this resolution to the Avon Lake Public Library and its staff members, Jerry Vogel and Laura Plensky.
I move for suspension of the rule requiring 3 readings. Ms. Rossmarin with the roll, please.
Mr. Arnold.
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes.
Ms. Gentry? Mr. Koss?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mr. Shamir?
Yes.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
I move for passage of resolution 2491, and then I'm gonna turn this discussion over to Ms. Rossmarin, Clerk of Council.
Yes, I'd like to explain how this process all began. Back in 2000, council acquired a digital document management system. And at the time, the clerk of council, Kathy Lynch, and her assistant, Barbara Dopp, they scanned all the documents that they could that were not in a bound book. They were just loose documents such as this, where it was a document that they could separate the documents. And they used at the time a desktop scanner. It was when I became the assistant clerk to Barbara Dopp, when she became clerk, I discovered, along with Barbara, that we had all these bound books that we weren't able to digitize because of the process at the time. We didn't want to separate them, they're historic. So we looked for a way to have some type of a scanning project in place. And it wasn't really until I started to work with other clerks that I discovered the library in Cleveland had some high resolution scanner. So my assistant at the time, Priscilla Shudek, and I, we went one summer, went down there when council was on recess, brought all these books, thinking that it was a simple task. And of course we were mistaken, because it is very tedious. When you open the books, you have to make sure the papers, it's to capture a picture. It's not always the easiest. There's a lot of attachments. So we quickly found and discovered that this was going to take a long time. It wasn't a simple project. And then things got back with council being on break. We weren't able to continue the process. I spoke with Jerry a number of times about scanners, and that's when he, as I stated in the resolution, that's when we worked together to complete a grant application. And then when you did acquire the scanner in 2021, Priscilla and I went and we were trained on it, and we had high hopes to, again, start that process. And she did. We were trained. We started again one summer, and she was pretty regularly going on a Wednesday and scanning some things, and we would switch off. But again, council went back into session, and we weren't able to continue that process. And it really wasn't until Jerry's persistence and an offer to help have the library staff and help us with the project. That's when we finally agreed, and we started to bring books a couple of at a time. And Laura, was able to scan. And again, like I said, these are the records, and as you can see, I mean, it's very. When you look at them, it's preserving them is something that we really need to do. When you see the handwritten, over 100 years old, some of these records. So it was wonderful that you were able to take it on and help us, complete this project. And now that I have them on a memory stick, they're uploaded into my system. So the next step in the process would be to index them and kind of get them to a place where we can share. I know I spoke with Laura about possibly sharing the documents I already had on my system so that the library could have that in your inventory as well. So I just wanted to, again, thank you and your staff for graciously taking on this project.
So, on behalf of council and Jerry, all your help, and Laura's all the help, we certainly appreciate that. And Bill, we appreciate the Board of Trustees agreeing to purchase the, I'm not gonna try that word, but the book scanner.
Book scanner.
But the book scanner, that's certainly to get our work done and helping train, and then also providing staff. So it's a great relationship, the city and the library working together as usual to try to get a project done. And record keeping is obviously extremely important as we move along for the future. So I wanted to thank you all for all that, and thank you all for coming down. If you'd like to say anything, you're welcome to come up there and say a few words.
Okay. 3 minutes.
No, yes, anyway, I would just like to say that I'm happy that we were able to do some good for the community for the long term. I think the local history collection, when it got to the library, there really wasn't much of one. And we've made it our mission ever since then to gather all these things, to put them together and make them accessible and understandable for people. And this was a big leg in that project. And like I said, I thought it would take forever, but it didn't.
No.
And we have the means to also host these things online and make them searchable for anybody who wants to research these things, as we do the records of a number of other groups and individuals. Yes, most of the heavy lifting was done by Laura, who we kind of got the standards right, and then the training of the other staff and volunteers who helped, and coordinating that so that we didn't, you know, like I said, you could easily make mistakes when you're scanning these things, missing a page, but it got cleaned up real good. And again, yes, William here has been very supportive of our local history efforts in the library, because it's what makes us unique, not just in this community, but around the world. You know, we're part of what makes this whole community work together. And one more thing we are working on right now is we are about, I think, a third of the way through digitizing the school board's records.
Oh, wow.
They're all sitting in my office, and we're going through book by book. So, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill, you want to say?
Yeah, just a quick word. Again, I appreciate the partnership that we have with the city, this one in particular with council, but we enjoy with Parks and Rec, Public Works, and a number of the departments. So we're eternally grateful for that too. And I would just like to say, for the volunteers that helped, lots were residents, and the feedback we heard, they learned a little bit about the history of Avon Lake through this project, because as they digitized the records, they came away with a better understanding of what council does and what the city does too. So I thought I'd share that as well. But again, always grateful for our working relationship with the city.
Thank you very much. Any further comments anyone has? Ross, with the roll call?
Mr. Arnold.
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh.
Yes.
Mr. Foss.
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Yes.
Mr. Shamir.
Yes.
Mr. Zuber.
Yes.
So thank you for coming down, and welcome to stay if you want. Appreciate all
Have
your
fun.
work.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Next, the approval of minutes for May 28th. Are there any edits or changes to those minutes?
Thank you.
Now that those minutes stand as published. Next is correspondence. Mrs. Ross, ready to receive any correspondence?
No, I have no correspondence to report. Thank you.
Has anyone else received any correspondence? Okay, now we go to reports. So we'll start with Mayor Switzel.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. Over the weekend, we had a couple great events. We had Make Music Day, which occurred on Friday evening. It saw bands and individuals playing at the old firehouse in Veterans Memorial Park. I want to thank Marilyn Zeidner and, of course, the North Coast Rotary for sponsoring that event. On Saturday was the 11th annual Hooks for Hunger event at Miller Road Park to raise money for the Community Resources Center. The event drew 58 teams. It was a very hot, humid day, so they got out on the lake, they caught their fish and came in. It was a great event, thanks to the many volunteers and donations that made it possible. I haven't heard a specific number for Saturday's event, but combined, Hooks for Hunger has now raised over $250,000 for CRS. So that's a great thing. And just quickly, I want to thank Jerry and Laura and their staff at the Avon Lake Public Library for all that work they did. I know how tedious and time-consuming that was, so that was great. I also wanted to provide a ALPS update, so the Avon Lake Play Space. We had our kickoff meeting with Kinley Horn, and the design has begun. We've been looking at different grading plans for the site, which I think will provide some exciting opportunities for views of the lake. Our own Public Works Department, John Liskovic, is working on, they're gonna be doing some of the site work. So I'm looking forward to see how our talented employees are gonna be able to contribute to the Avon Lake Play Space. I spoke with State Senator Manning last week, and he announced that we have received an additional $350,000 grant towards ALPS. So obviously this is excellent news, and we'll continue to work out the details of what promises to be a first-class community playground. That's all I have, sir. Thank you.
Questions for the mayor? Next is the council president's report. The next collective committee meeting will be held on Monday, July 1st at 7 o'clock. The next regular council meeting will be held on Monday, July 8th at 7 p.m. Also wanted to note that Mrs. Gentry isn't here this evening because of illness. Any questions for the council president? Okay, with that, we go to law director, Mr. Reber.
No report to you, Mr. President.
Questions for the law director? Go to finance director, Mr. Wooden.
No report this evening, Mr. Council President.
Questions for Finance Director? Next, the Public Works Director, Mr. Loscovich.
Yeah, good evening. I have just a couple updates I'd like to share. First on the Walker Road paving project. So pavement surface course has been down. All the signal lights have been installed. Striping has been completed while there was a small issue that occurred with a rainstorm that on the phase 4 section. We are currently working with the contractors on how to resolve that issue, but we are aware of that issue that occurred due to that rainstorm event. Additionally, we did a preliminary walkthrough on the two crossing installations that were done, and we'll be scheduling that walkthrough, an actual final walkthrough with ODOT's team to go through that project. So we've prepared a preliminary punch list, and we'll compare it with theirs when we go through that. Additionally, Gable Ditch project limits have been cleaned up, or have been, I'm sorry, project limit cleaning has been complete. Debris has been removed from site. Site cleanup and restoration is what remains for that project. And then finally, I'd like to just take a couple minutes just to recognize an outstanding above and beyond call to duty that was performed by one of our community transportation drivers, John Brown. It was reported back to me that he was scheduled to pick up a regular user of the transportation bus, arrived there for the pickup. The user was not there, present on site, which was highly odd because the user is fairly regular. He took it upon himself to work with staff, I believe it was at the Beach Park Towers, to do a well check on the resident. Turns out she had fallen and was unable to get attention. So this effort on his behalf really made an impact on her and her quality of life. So I just want to recognize that outstanding service, and we see it every day, but from various members of the city staff, but this one is definitely important to recognize. And that's all I have for today.
Thank you, sir. Closes for John. Okay, with that, we go to standing committees. First, building and utilities. Mrs. Gentry isn't here. Any questions for building and utilities? Next, communication, environmental, and recreational programming. Mr. Shamir.
Nothing to report.
Any questions for Mr. Shamir? Next, we go economic development. Mr. Arnold.
Thank you, no report.
Questions for Mr. Arnold? Next is finance. We'll have a finance meeting next Monday. That'll be at 6 p.m. Any questions for finance? Next is human resources. Mr. Zuber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have several items on the agenda. Most of them are increases for non-bargaining employees. We do have one job description that will only be on the second reading. We look to pass that on the 8th, so there'll be no suspension of the rule on that. And under Ordinance 2489R, there's something at your table. Some small changes in the court for those employees at a request of the judge to do. They're all part-time employees, work no more than 16 hours. So those are just part-time increases. Those were the only changes. I think I said last week that those would be small changes possibly coming, and those are that. Our next meeting will be on the 8th at 6 here in council chambers. 8th of July, that is.
Questions for human resources? This is public safety and health. Mr. Cross.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Council President. The Public Safety and Health Committee met on Thursday, June the 20th at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers. We had a few items on the agenda, one of which is going to be on for a vote tonight, which is the one-day liquor license permit for the annual Beer Fest that's going to take place on August the 24th, 2024 at Millerwood Park. This is an annual piece of legislation that we pass that authorizes a one-day liquor license permit for this event. This is now a traditional event here in the city. It's been held for, I think, 5 or 6 years now already. We're not aware of any instances that have come with this event. The police department did not have any negative comments on it, and we'll be asking for suspension of the rules and passage on that tonight. We also had a discussion. Mr. Rudy Breglia came and made a presentation on a new seatbelt pilot program grant application that he wanted the City of Avon Lake to consider. This is a $15,000 grant being offered to all of the school districts in Lorraine County, and he was encouraging Avon Lake to apply for this. If folks do recall, the City of Avon Lake did participate in a similar type of program with a pilot program having seatbelts on a school bus several years ago. So this would be another school bus that would be selected for this pilot program. There was no vote taken on that, but I did let Mr. Briglia know that I would talk to the mayor and superintendent and the school board president and attempt to put a meeting together between the four of us to discuss this further. Following that meeting, I did reach out, sent an email to all parties I just mentioned, and we'll look to arrange something in the near future. The third thing that we discussed was the Pulte Memorandum of Understanding, MOU update. This is has been talked about a number of times over the last few months with the new development that has gone in across from Moorwood Avenue on Walker Road. There are needs for improvements to improve the safety and the traffic flow in that area, and that's going to need an update to the Pulte MOU that was discussed late last year. That MOU was never signed by the city, so it is open for renegotiation. And I understand that this is going to be discussed in some form at Planning Commission and then back at City Council. But it was an update to the members of the committee of what the priorities were from the city or from the administration. And this includes adding a RRFB, the rectangular flashing crosswalk signals at Moorwood Walker intersection. So hopefully we'll have more discussion on that soon. And that's all I have, sir.
Thank you, sir. Questions for Mr. Koss? Mr. Ebert?
Yes, Mr. Cross, I prepared today a new memorandum of understanding. I'll get you a copy before the night's over, addressing the issues, updating it based on what, as you indicated, transpired. So this will be part of the Planning Commission tomorrow night.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Thank you. Mr. Cos, for the public's benefit, are you able to let them know if a traffic study determined that a traffic signal was warranted?
Yes, thank you. Yes, the city conducted a traffic study of that area. Pulte conducted their own study last year, and the city conducted their own after that as well too. And it was conclusive that the addition of the new Pulte development over there did increase the traffic flow in that area. And I'm gonna get a little technical on this, and I don't know all the specifics on it, but I asked the question to the chief. So according to the study that we had, that intersection, that area went from a level D to a level E. And I said, okay, well, what does that mean? He says, well, level F means that we would have qualified for a traffic light. We did not qualify for a traffic light there, but we did move from a D to an E, so there was an impact at that area. We're just short, though, of a traffic signal being placed there. And because we're now short of a traffic signal, but we still have an increase in traffic, that's why we're looking at some of these other measures that fall just short of a traffic signal in that area.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, well, then we go to public service, Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Thank you. The public service meeting, the next meeting will be September the 10th. Seems like a long time from now, doesn't it? But it will be after the recess. And tonight we have 5 items on our agenda from public service. When we come to them, I will go into their details. Thank you.
Questions from Mrs. Fenderbosh? This is the Planning Commission, Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Thank you. The next Planning Commission meeting will be it's tomorrow, actually. It's out of sync. Usually it's the first Tuesday of the month, but it's going to be tomorrow, the 5th. And there's 5 items on that agenda. And to give you an idea of what we're going to be discussing, there's going to be the Covalent Partners LLC site plan approval for construction of a new restaurant and wine bar. This is the same wine bar restaurant that was discussed earlier in 83. They're coming to planning because they've reduced the size of the building. The next item is Cough Construction Corporation. It's a major subdivision improvement plan approval for Southport subdivision number 3. The next one is Cough Construction Company major subdivision final plat approval for Harbor PUD subdivision number 4. The next one is Pulte Homes of Ohio Cough Construction Corporation major subdivision improvement plan approval for Legacy Isle subdivision number 3. And the last one is Pulte Homes of Ohio major subdivision final plat approval for Port West subdivision number 5. The packet's about this thick. I'm sure we're going to be here a long time tomorrow night, but the public is welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for planning? Let's go to zoning board, Mayor Spitzel.
Yes, the next meeting is scheduled for this Wednesday, June 26th at 7, and there's, I think, 5 different items on the agenda.
Any questions for zoning board? Next is Parks and Recreation Commission, Mr. Shamir.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Questions for Parks and Rec? Any special committee reports? Mrs. Fenderbush.
Thank you. The Tree Commission is going to be meeting next on September the 11th at 7 p.m. at the old firehouse. We have one item on our agenda, which I will speak to when we come to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other special committee reports? Okay, with that, we'll go to motions or any additions or deletions of motions. Mr. Zuber, if you take the first motion, please.
I move to accept the resignation of Dennis Keene due to retirement effective June 19th, 2024.
Discussion?
Mr. Keene is retiring from the Public Works Department. We wish him well. I believe that John may have some comments on him.
John?
Yes, thank you. While my time with Dennis was short, I did get to have a chance to know him and learn of some of his skills and just value that he brought to the Public Works Department. He spent the last part of his term here working in a sign shop, working on training some of the other staff that will succeed him, and continuing on with the work that's done down there.
Any further discussion? Mr. Osborne with the roll, please.
Mr. Arnold.
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh.
Yes.
Mr. Koss.
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Yes.
Mr. Shamir.
Yes.
Mr. Zuber.
Yes.
Next motion, I move designating Valerie Rossmarin as a council representative for the public records training. In discussion, we designate her to bring back the information. She's also put together a training session on June 26th for council members and other officials in the city, and actually other officials in other cities as well, which I gotta give her a lot of credit for, from 10 to 1 at the library on June 26th for public records training.
It's 25.
27. Are you sure?
You're right.
That's 26.
You're right. Sorry.
As well, that's public records and.
I want to make sure you show up.
Any further discussion? Mr. Rossmarin with the roll, please.
Mr. Arnold.
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh.
Yes.
Mr. Koss.
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Yes.
Mr. Shamir.
Yes.
Mr. Zuber.
Yes.
Next motion, Mrs. Fenderbosh.
Thank you. I move to advertise the Public Works Director to advertise for bids for the 2024 crack sealing program.
Discussion?
Thank you. By authorizing the Public Works Director to go forward to advertise for it, we'll be able to go out for crack sealing. And last week, I talked about how crack sealing actually extends the life of our pavements. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Rossmarin with the roll, please.
Mr. Arnold.
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh.
Yes.
Mr. Koss.
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Yes.
Mr. Shamir.
Yes.
Mr. Zuber.
Yes.
Next motion, Mrs. Fenderbosh.
Thank you. I authorize the Public Works Director to advertise for bids for the 2024 street striping program.
Discussion?
Thank you. As we know, when the light hits the striping, it fades over time, and it's time now to go through the city and to do this. One of the changes that's going to take place, the public will note, is that there will be no passing zones on Walker Road from the west end to the east end, and we're hoping that this is going to increase our safety. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Rossmarin with the roll, please.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes.
Mr. Koss,
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mr. Shamir?
Yes.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
Now go to legislation. Any additions or deletions of legislation? The clerk will read ordinance 24-68, please.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a clinical affiliation agreement with Lorraine County Community College and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Cost.
I move for passage of ordinance number 24-68.
Discussion?
Yes, sir. This is a 5-year agreement. The City of Avon Lake, our fire department in particular, has had this agreement with Lorraine County Community College with their EMS training, an emergency training program there at the college. And this is a new 5-year agreement that would keep that partnership going. This has been reviewed by the law director and there were no concerns.
Any further discussion? Rossmarin with the roll, please.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes.
Mr. Koss,
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mr. Shamir?
Yes.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
Clerk will read ordinance 24-74, please.
An ordinance amending codified ordinance section 668.02, noxious weeds and undesirable vegetation, declaration of nuisance.
Mrs. Fenderbosh.
Thank you. I move for passage of ordinance number 24-74.
Discussion?
This is the third reading, and as we have shared over the last 6 weeks, the codified ordinance section 668.02 already has noxious weeds listed that is referred to with the Ohio Revised Code ending in 5-37-01. We needed to add the words invasive plant species that would be brought out in the Ohio Administrative Code section 901:5-30-01. And by listing this, we are now in compliance with the state of Ohio. Thank you. And this did come out of the Tree Commission to the Public Service Committee to this body.
Further discussion? Rossmarin with the roll, please.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes.
Mr. Koss,
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mr. Shamir?
Yes.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
Now go to second readings. If the clerk will read ordinance 24-78, please.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a lease agreement to acquire 2 Western Star 47X chassis cabs for the Public Works Department and declaring an emergency.
Mrs. Fenderbosh.
Thank you. This is just the second reading for this particular ordinance. And the Public Works Director and the Public Service Committee, they recommend the purchase of these 2 salt trucks. And the contract will be with Valley Freightliner, Inc. of Parma. They are a party to a cooperative purchasing contract with Sourcewell for the total amount of $513,540. However, when this is brought to a vote, it won't be tonight, but when it is brought to a vote, we will be authorizing the mayor to execute a lease agreement with Huntington Bank to provide financing for 6 years in the amount of $96,639.75 a year. It would be called an emergency measure because of the necessity to provide the Public Works Department with equipment to promptly and efficiently perform the duties and to further take advantage of Sourcewell's pricing. Thus, it's for the public health, safety, and welfare. So when this is voted on, it would go into effect immediately after the mayor signs it. Thank you.
Further discussion? Clerk will read ordinance 24-84, please.
An ordinance adopting a job description for the position of full-time senior program assistant and establishing the qualifications and duties for said position.
Mr. Zuber.
I move the second reading of ordinance number 2484.
Discussion?
This came out of our last Human Resource Committee meeting. It's for a full-time senior program assistant at the old firehouse. This would be a new full-time position, and we look to have more discussion on the 8th of July and hopefully pass it at that time at the meeting on the 8th.
Any further discussion? Clerk read ordinance 24-87.
An ordinance approving wage increases for certain part-time, non-bargaining unit personnel and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Zuber.
I move for the suspension of the
Council rule requiring 3 readings.
Rossmarin with the roll, please.
Mr. Arnold.
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh.
Yes.
Mr. Koss.
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Yes.
Mr. Shamir.
Yes.
Mr. Zuber.
Yes,
Mr. Zuber.
I move for passage of ordinance number 2487.
Discussion?
This is an increase, a 2% increase for our non-bargaining employees. This mirrors what the bargaining employees get up until the first of the year, when the contracts will be renegotiated, and I think that we'll be reviewing this probably around that time. In the future, we will be only dealing with those above $22.20 an hour, however.
Further discussion? Rossmarin with the roll, please.
Mr. Arnold.
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh.
Yes.
Mr. Koss.
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Yes.
Mr. Shamir.
Yes.
Mr. Zuber.
Yes.
The clerk will read ordinance 24-88, please.
An ordinance approving wage increases for certain non-bargaining unit personnel and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Zuber.
I move for the suspension of council rule requiring 3 readings.
Rossmarin with the roll, please.
Mr. Arnold.
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh.
Yes.
Mr. Koss.
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Yes.
Mr. Shamir.
Yes.
Mr. Zuber.
Yes.
Mr. Zuber.
Move for passage of ordinance 2488.
Discussion?
This grants a 2% increase effective July 1st for our non-bargaining employees, years the prior for the part-time non-bargaining employees, and also moves forward for us to hopefully start this on a yearly basis at the first of the year.
Any further discussion? Rossmarin with the roll, please.
Mr. Arnold.
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh.
Yes.
Mr. Koss.
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Yes.
Mr. Shamir.
Yes.
Mr. Zuber.
Yes.
Clerk will read ordinance 24-89R, please.
An ordinance approving wage increases for the Avon Lake Municipal Court personnel and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Zuber.
I move for the suspension of council rule requiring 3 readings.
Rossmarin with the roll, please.
Mr. Arnold.
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh.
Yes.
Mr. Koss.
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Yes.
Mr. Shamir.
Yes.
Mr. Zuber.
Yes.
Mr. Zuber.
Move for passage of ordinance number
2489R.
Discussion?
This is also increases for the personnel at the Avon Lake Municipal Court. This is a 2% increase effective July 1st and also 4% for January 1st for the personnel at the court. I think we're gonna be reviewing a lot of the court employees and the appointments and different things like that in the future to upgrade the way that is done. As we all are aware, I think, around the table, that the court can order this. The judge did not want to do that. I worked with her and the law director and the mayor in order to move these forward, so hopefully next year we'll be able to bring some other things forward to update and upgrade what's happening at the court.
Any further discussion? Rossmarin with the roll, please.
Mr. Arnold.
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh.
Yes.
Mr. Koss.
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Yes.
Mr. Shamir.
Yes.
Mr. Zuber.
Yes.
We now go to first readings. If the clerk will read ordinance 24-92, please.
An ordinance authorizing the purchase of a tow-behind chipper for the Public Works Department and declaring an emergency.
Mrs. Fenderbosh.
Thank you. I move for suspension of the rule requiring 3 readings.
Rossmarin with the roll, please.
Mr. Arnold.
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh.
Yes.
Mr. Koss.
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Yes.
Mr. Shamir.
Yes.
Mr. Zuber.
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh.
Thank you. I move for passage of temporary ordinance number 24-92.
Discussion?
Thank you. The Public Works Director and the Public Service Committee recommend the purchase of a tow-behind chipper as part of our branch pickup program. And the city desires to contract with KTS Equipment of Wellington, Ohio, to purchase this piece of equipment. They're a part of the cooperative purchasing contract with Sourcewell, and the city can purchase the tow-behind chipper cheaper through them than if we went out to bid on our own. The amount would be $51,342, And the reason why it is even less than what we talked about last week was that there is equipment that we are actually turning in, so they're taking it in. And the purchase is actually using the 2024 Ohio EPA Community and Litter Control grant that's available, which we've already accepted. This is going to be passed and voted upon by emergency measure, and the emergency is the necessity to provide the Public Works Department with equipment in order that they may promptly and efficiently perform their duties, and to take advantage of the Sourcewell pricing. This is for the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Avon Lake.
Further discussion? Mr. Rossmarin with the roll, please.
Mr. Arnold.
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh.
Yes.
Mr. Koss.
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Yes.
Mr. Shamir.
Yes.
Mr. Zuber.
Yes.
Clerk will read ordinance 24-93.
An ordinance to reestablish ward boundaries for the City of Avon Lake pursuant to the requirements of the Avon Lake City Charter and declaring an emergency.
It's the first reading of this ordinance by charter. The city has to redraft the ward boundaries to balance the wards out. We hired Triad to do that, and the balances came out to readjust them. Ward 1 will have 6,355 residents. Ward 2 is 6,266. Ward 3 is 6,412, and in Ward 4 it's 6,173, from a total of 25,206, I believe. And Mr. Ebert, you can correct me, they use the 2020 population consensus
That's correct.
to do the balance on this.
That is correct.
Upon approval, Triad will then review the legal descriptions of the new ward boundaries prepared by the city in accuracy and completeness, produce the final map and associated population data, and provide a digital boundary shape file for the Lorraine County Board of Elections, the new wards as accepted by the city, and that'll go into effect the next general election next year. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And this will balance out the wards, and it's the first reading of this item. Any discussion on this item? With that, we go to clerk will read ordinance 24-94, please.
An ordinance allowing beer, wine, and hard seltzer type beverages to be sold, served, dispensed, and consumed at a one-day beer fest to be held at Miller Road Park on August 24th, 2024, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Cost.
Thank you. I move to suspend the council rule requiring 3 readings.
Mr. Rossmarin with the roll, please.
Mr. Arnold.
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh.
Yes.
Mr. Koss.
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Yes.
Mr. Shamir.
Yes.
Mr. Zuber.
Yes.
Mr. Cost.
Thank you. I move for passage of ordinance number 24-94.
Discussion?
Yes, first thing, in our packet, in the description, it has August 26, 2024, but the actual, ordinance, in the packet has August 24th, 2024, and that is the actual date, August 24th, 2024. Yeah, this is an item that came out of the last, safety committee meeting last week, and, as I mentioned, this is an annual event. This is done with the cooperation of the city and the Avon Lake Police Department. There have been no issues no negative issues that have taken place with this event in the past. The chief had no concerns, the department had no concerns, and this is a well-run event. And passing this today will authorize the one-day liquor license for this event to be held. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any further discussion? Mr. Rossmarin with the roll, please.
Mr. Arnold.
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh.
Yes.
Mr. Koss.
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Yes.
Mr. Shamir.
Yes.
Mr. Zuber.
Yes.
That concludes the legislation portion of the meeting. We do have public input, but we have nobody in the chamber this evening. So we'll go to miscellaneous business and announcements. Does anyone have any announcements, Mr. Cox?
Yeah, just want to say one thing. I don't know if anyone at home notices the difference, but we had an equipment failure prior to this meeting. I'm just watching Stephanie and the work that she had to put together with Barb Cagley as well too to get us on the air. So I don't know if there's any difference that people are noticing, and if they're not noticing it, then that's really a job well done. But I'm looking at the setup in here and how you guys had to scramble at the last minute, so thank you.
And thank you for mentioning it, Mr. Scott, it's much appreciated. And thank you, Stephanie and Barb, for your work too, the last minute setup. Mr. Arnold?
I just wanted to remind the public that we have an ad hoc committee coming up on this Thursday at 6 o'clock. It's for short-term rentals. Just some discussion on that, so that'd be at 6 o'clock here in Council Chambers.
Thank you, sir. Okay, with that, I'll need a motion to adjourn. Mr.
So moved.
Discussion, Rossmarin with the roll to adjourn.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes.
Mr. Cos?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mr. Shamir?
Yes.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes. That, meeting is adjourned.